So we're going to be talking today for Integrity Capital Education on integrity DNA, and we call it what we live by. Every place that you go to has a DNA. Every culture has its own DNA. It could be a healthy one or an unhealthy one, but it has a DNA nonetheless. And so we're going to describe specifically our DNA here today. And we'll start off with, what do we mean by this? And what we mean is it's our value system. You'll hear that a lot, is what are your values? What do you believe in? And so that's what we mean when we say our DNA. We're talking about our values, on how we function, make decisions. So it's also a decision point for us when we start to understand these. This is how we make decisions when we hire people or release them, or how we grow and who we're going to sidle up with as it pertains to lenders, vendors, and the like. It's also how someone moves up or moves on. So it's the value system kind of gives us this barometer system on how we function within an organization. And so that's what we mean when we're talking about our DNA. So we're not talking about physical DNA, just in case anybody's confused by that. The first one is I own it. And what we mean by that is that we flee from what we would deem to be hide and blame cultures, where people will hide from, when they've made an error, or they don't want to take personal responsibility, or they want to blame somebody else. We are the opposite of that, where we want to have a culture that is ownership. We say, yep, I did well, or I didn't do well, or I failed on this, or I made a mistake, or whatever that is. We don't want to develop a culture where we are blaming other people or we're hiding from anything. And so sometimes you'll hear us say we raise our hand. So it's we just take ownership when we're wrong. I remember years ago, I had a friend of mine, and there was a bunch of people us hanging out, and I think I had done some things that were probably hurtful relationally. And I remember he took me out on a walk and he confronted me about it. And as a wonderful, immature young man, I got defensive. I started to try to make an argument with him why he was wrong. And we went through this 30-minute escapade on all the things that he was wrong in the situation. And then finally he made a comment at the end, and he says, do you think you're going to actually take ownership on anything? And I remember it was just this epiphany and moment where I was super convicted. And I looked at him, I said, you're right. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Will you forgive me? Right. And so that was immediate, the moment where things changed, our relationship grew, and I was able to grow as well. And the reason why this is important, because it's very difficult for a culture to be healthy or grow if we don't have a bunch of people that are just willing to say, I own it, I take responsibility, and move on. And that doesn't mean that we berate somebody or look down on them or we hang on to things. It just means you just take it, you move on, and you grow from it. So that's what we mean when we say I own it for our particular DNA. The next one is what we call successful failure. Successful failure. Sometimes you'll hear people say we want to fail hard and fail fast. Means we go for it, and we have room, lots of room for failure. We're trying to give people the opportunity to jump out into the abyss, to take ownership and realize it's okay to fail. I think the conceptual historical schooling might teach you this is not a good idea. Don't go outside of the bounds. Stay within the walls. Otherwise, you're doing something wrong. And our perspective is let's go for it. So one of the ways that manifests itself specifically in here is what we call type 1, type 2 decisions. I'm just using this as a framework, but there's a whole nother video on this that obviously you can get access to, where, a type 1 decision is something that is a larger strategic decision that doesn't necessarily have a reverse to it. So that would be a big hire, moving into a major market, things of that magnitude. Those type 1 decisions are things that can't be made autonomously of management. But I would say that's probably only 5 to 10% of the decisions that we make. The rest of them would be considered type 2 or operational decisions where they can be reversed. So if you make a mistake, something goes wrong, it's okay. We can unwind that, because we want to give you the ability to say, I'm going to take a shot, I'm going to have an idea, and I'm going to jump. And that's important for our culture, because as we grow, we want to have people use their minds and their thoughts to come up with different ideas in order for us to be competitive, in order for us to serve our clients in an innovative and proactive way. So successful failure is definitely part of our DNA. We want to continue to peddle that as well. The third thing is handing the relay baton on. So we really believe in creating the next person in line. That's super important, because we're always bringing somebody up under us. We want to have the next person that we're trying to grow, to pour into, to take them up as well, because that is extremely important for us to be nimble, to be flexible, to grow, to have the ability to pivot and change if we need to. It also allows us, if somebody gets sick or somebody moves on or something happens, that we're not completely down. We can pivot and have somebody who else knows what's going on, and there's an integration within the organization. So that's very healthy. It's proactive because it will help us grow. Most organizations will die because they don't grow people and bring them back up. They won't invest in them. And so what happens is it becomes too top heavy. And so when the head person or what everything was leaned on dies or moves on, then everything just kind of falls by the wayside. So we really want to focus on how do we bring people up? How do we pour into them? Why? I think lots of reasons. It allows us to be nimble, scale, but I think it also gives people the opportunity to really achieve their dreams, the opportunity to stretch themselves, the opportunities to grow in their confidence, and just ultimately their peace of mind. Running lean is part of our DNA. We don't need to, the way I look at this is we don't need to overspend to get quality. And what I mean is when we spend, we want to spend where we need to. So we want to be able to invest in the areas that we should, and not spend too much in the areas that we shouldn't. So we should be investing in our employees, taking care of our employees, compensation wise, investing the time and the resources into them. But we don't need to have the highfalutin fancy type of things that ultimately are not necessarily the best way to invest the money. I'm reminded of Warren Buffett. He actually still drives the same truck that he had, I think, when he first was married. I think he still lives in the same house that he originally lives in. And the guy is obviously a billionaire, but he just has a very running lean type of mentality to be prudent. It's also good when things get a little rocky, which they will. We'll hit a recession. It's just good not to be top heavy with debt and bad debt and what I would call getting in over our skis. So this is just the way we operate, is we don't mind spending the money. We just want it to go in the areas of the highest return on investment, which is our people, technology, and the areas that really are going to move us closer and further towards our particular vision of being the most proactive commercial mortgage company in the world. Get 70% and then run. This is going to be hard for people that are, they want it perfect, right? And all of us do to some degree, but it's healthy, because what we're trying to do is to get just enough wisdom to make a wise choice, but not overdoing it so that we're paralyzed. So we again, we don't want to be underinformed. That's why I said 70% gets over the 50% marker, but we don't need to go to 100. Otherwise, what we're doing is we're just getting stuck. And this really helps us to just go for it, make some failures, have some things flop around, and then we get to learn from that. And that's how you actually move quicker and faster, and you start to learn, because if you're waiting, there's a old saying, a B plan implemented is better than an A plan on the shelf. And then General George Patton said, a good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week. So the point is we want to get enough information and go, and then we'll pick up the 30% pieces to refine those things. And then that's how we really learn and we go. And that'll manifest itself in training and growing and decision-making as we go. So that ties directly in with type 1, type 2 decisions, just giving you guys the freedom and the autonomy to go for it and to fail. Vision or perish. We believe in looking forward to the future or where we're headed so that we can create hope and reasons to grow. So some exciting future that we're going to be unveiling. Because no vision, people perish. People want to know that we're headed in a direction, that we have a place and a destination. There's a couple of quotes here. The ability to envision possibilities for the future and share that vision with others distinguishes leaders from non-leaders. This is Hermina Ibarra. Leaders create things that didn't exist before. They do this by giving the tribe a vision of something that could happen, but hasn't yet. And that's Seth Godin. And then impossible is just a big word thrown around by small men who find it easier to live in the world they've been given than to explore the power they have to change it. I love that one, Amy Leto. So we want to have a vision. We want to have a place that we're going, a destination that we're going to pursue and push for. Otherwise, we just run around aimlessly doing things that are not moving us in the right direction. Managing priorities, not time. You'll hear that lots of time here. We manage priorities, not time. Time passes by, but we only can focus on where are we going to spend our priorities. And if we're going to be the most proactive in the world, we must manage our priorities well. It takes thought, takes planning. There's a thing called time blocking. So really just being super intentional about what is the most important thing. What are the rocks that you're trying to move within your particular day? I just thought, if you don't tell your day where to go, your day will tell you where to go. I've stole that a little bit from Dave Ramsey, who said, if you don't tell your money where to go, then your money's going to tell you where it wants to go. Reinvent and then reinvent. Great companies are built with innovation on a continual basis. We have to ask good questions. How could this be better? How could we improve? What is getting in the way of doing great things? How do I need to change in order to see change happen? So we want to be a place that is improving and reinventing so that we can refine. This couples with innovation comes out of frustration. We really want to embrace our frustrations as a road sign telling us where to innovate. Our systems are an example of that. Also, my gray hair might be an example of that too. We have backup lenders. Why did that happen? Because we've had so many things blow up in the past, and that was frustrating. We have a specific appraisal review department or system that we have in place because we've had so many things go haywire. We have kickoff call now because we've had so many things go haywire. So all the things that we keep stacking up and innovating really comes out of frustration that we have experienced in the past so that we can have a better future. So it's okay to be frustrated. You just have to ask yourself the question, what do I want to do to make it better and change? So frustration can be a gift if it's channeled properly. You'll hear specific is terrific, vague is the plague. That's Tom's favorite statement here. When you try to accomplish goals, you got to be specific. Otherwise, you're just vague. It's vague. Where are we going? Uh, if I said, hey, well, I want to have more sales this year, well, that's pretty vague. What does that mean? Versus I'm going to increase my call volume by 20% every month in order to achieve my desired income of 200,000 by this date. So specific is terrific, and it gives you a place to aim and a target so that you can manage, because you cannot manage what you cannot measure. So we want to be specific when we're trying to make decisions and not vague. We want to go from being critical to curious. In dealing with our people, we believe it's best to start with curiosity versus being critical. Gathering information will help you be patient with people and make better decisions. People are like deep wells of water. There's a lot of things that make people tick or don't. And in dealing with people, we want to be quick to listen, slow to speak. Like if you get into a situation, hey, I've noticed that this has been going on. Would you mind telling me what's happening, what's going on? And so you're trying to gather information internally as well as externally with clients so that you can go from a place of critical to curious. It's an area that we can all grow in, but is an area that we want to foster here. Hand in glove with that is we want to call people. We don't want to call them out. We want to call them up. So we believe in giving people the opportunity to move up and not condemn them. We want to give the opportunity to grow and deal with areas they need to improve. So this gives them the power, right? You can't force people to change, but you want to give them the opportunity to either change or not. Allow them to make the choice. And then we deal with constructive conflict at the firm because we want to allow people the opportunity to grow and change if they have the desire. So change is inevitable to grow, and not everyone is going to want to. We are definitely going to grow and we're definitely going to change. So we want to make sure we're calling people up. And I believe people want to do that. They want to grow. So we want to call them up and not call them out, which goes hand in glove with the one prior to that. We want to be a wisdom seeker. So we believe in the ability to grow is a byproduct of our wisdom that we grow in. So we believe leaders are readers and information gatherers. And wisdom includes taking action on wisdom and applying it. So growth is only a function of someone personally growing. So we are seeking wisdom, not only in literature, but also from people. So I have my life packed full of lots of leaders, mentors, coaches, because I realize how much deficiency I have. I need a lot of help. And so I'm always asking people for advice, wisdom, insight, because I know I have a limited scope on things and I want perspective. So we want to have that kind of mentality of being a wisdom seeker, which again goes hand in glove with being a solution seeker. So problems are many. We're going to have lots of them. And we really believe in seeing them as opportunities to grow. So this happens by asking different questions like, how can I solve this? What is the best way to make this work? Who do I need to engage to assure that this can be solved? What other ways should I look at this in order to make this a win? Otherwise, what happens is we get into what I call the mud story. When I used to read this book to my kids when they were younger, they had this little worm that got stuck in the mud, and all of his friends kept walking by, and he would yell out to them. He says, "I'm in the mud. I'm in the mud." And they would say, "Well, do you want help getting out of the mud?" He said, "Can't you see I'm in the mud? Look, it's dirty, it's grimy, and the Keeville kept coming by. He said, "Do you want me to pull you out of there?" He says, "No, don't you understand? I'm in the mud." And the point was he didn't really want to solve the problem. He just wanted to relish in the mud. And so we want to be a solution seeker and not hang out in the mud. Personhood versus perspectives. We believe all people are intrinsically valuable autonomously from what they do. That is our belief system. We know that we will differ from people's perspectives and choose to disqualify, not based upon their value, but based upon the perspective. And so that's why we distinguish personhood versus perspectives. So our focus is that we want to align with people that are part of our value system because we're trying to go in a direction. But that doesn't mean that they don't have intrinsic value. Sometimes you'll hear me say you can be friendly versus befriending. That would be similar to somebody walking by that you can wave to, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to invite them into your house. So there's a distinction, which, you know, we only have so much time in life. And so you're not going to be able to be friends with everybody, but you can always value people based upon who they are intrinsically. Something similar to this too, why we certainly try to hitch up with certain clients and people here too. My wife used to be a trainer, and I remember she got advice from a mentor who told her, she said, whatever you do not hire somebody, or do not take a client on who will not follow your eating regimen. And she's like, well, why? He said, because what'll happen is they'll work their tail off. They won't eat the right way. They'll never gain the results, and then they'll fire you, and then they'll blame you after. And so don't ever do it. He says, you just let them go if they won't follow the system. I just always thought that was really interesting in terms of this idea of sometimes you're going to have to hitch up to the right value system and make sure that it's the right perspective and person. Final one is candid but gracious. You'll hear this a ton. We believe in being candid internally and externally. As this is proactive trait, we believe that we can do this in a gracious manner. You know, example, I've noticed that we've had a tough time getting information from you. Is everything okay? And the reason why we need this in a timely manner is so that it will help you get what you need in order to get the loan done. That's just a small example. There'll be many of those as we go along, but that means we have to be upfront with people, but we can do so in a gracious way so that we can properly live out our particular culture and DNA. So all these are just us living out our proactive culture for Integrity Capital. So do we have any questions about that, or comments or clarifications?